Tell me about your grandfather. What do you remember about him?
Well, he was a dear old soul. The most thing I ever remember about my grandfather was sitting on the porch with his cane, and he always had this big long beard, and part of the time it was full of damn beer, and part of the time we'd wash it and it'd be clean. But he's always sitting there, and he was jovial, and he was always be laughing and talk to you every time you come in. He'd just talk and talk and talk, tell you about his old war days. He was in the Civil War. He was wounded and had a silver plate in his head.
Which side did he fight on?
Well, I imagine what was Virginia, you know, he fought for Virginia.
So he fought on the South then?
Yeah. Right then I couldn't think. Yeah. And he'd been married twice. He married a woman from up in Wise County first, and then he went to Kentucky and found him his other bride, my step-grandmother. And all the time ever I knew him, he lived out there in that log house, but he had lived around several places. Of course, when I was born and raised here, I knew him as living out there. But they come from Wise County down here and to Blackwater, and then from Blackwater back up here. And then he bought this big farm down here, you know. He bought all of that from way out there where Lake lived, you know, all the way back to down here where Viola Carter lived. And then from hill to hill, all the way across, both ways. From the ridge over yonder to the top of the hill back on this way. And then he divided it up between his children, you know, Uncle George and Uncle Jeff and Paul. And they had two sisters, but he gave them money. They didn't share in the land. That way then he made it all equal. And each year, as they harvested their crops, they filled his barn, his crib full of corn, and always took him flour to mill. And of course, you always made your own flour then, and cornbread.
So he divided it up before he died?
Oh yes, that was a long time before he died. So when he passed away, everything was settled, you know.
And they just sort of took care of him?
They did. They seen to his needs. Of course, he never had to go to the doctor. I don't know if he'd ever went to the doctor. Really, I don't. Never known him being to a doctor. Old Doc Young would come across the mountain. He rode a horse over here and doctored us. Brought his little pill box, you know, and he'd sit down and give me some old paper. He'd take his quinine and his calomel, and he'd pour a little in that paper and fold it up and give so many of these and so many of these, and that was the medicine.
Where would he come from?
Across the mountain over Sticklesville. His old home place just up above Sticklesville. Dad would go over there after him, though. I mean, go and tell him that you want him. There was no telephone. They'd go over and get him. He'd ride his horse over. And he pulled teeth, too. I remember one time I had a tooth to be pulled, and he'd been out to our house, and we was walking back up the road from Pattinsville. And he said, your ma said I must get down and pull your tooth right there in the road. So he got down off the horse and pulled my tooth and got on his horse and went home. Oh, mercy. Of course, we was always dirty and filthy when we got home every evening. Had to get a wash pan and take a bath in. We had no running water. But we always carried water from the branch over there and had it and took a bath. Got ready for school next morning. We'd come in from school, and if our dress wasn't dirty, we had to hang it up. We just had to, you know, while one was being clean, the other was being worn. But we always went to school clean.
The spring house down there, did you use it as a spring house when you lived there in the house?
Oh, yeah, that was the only refrigeration we had. We could slice butter out of that fruit down that cave over there. But no, we had it nice and clean, you know. It was swept out every day, and there wasn't a cobweb or nothing in there. And they had a screen up over it back there, wooden lattice, you know, to keep anything from coming through. And we carried all of our milk and all. They'd just milk and take it over there and do that, and go down at the branch and get the water to wash the things in. We didn't think nothing about germs. It come from Big Spring, just up, you know where Grandpa's old place was out there, where the big new house is now. That was the old big log house. That spring come out of that hollow and trickle right on down to their spring house. We just go down and dip up water and do. But she've always brought water from the house when she churned, you know, putting the milk, and she had to put in cold water in it to make it not be warm. We just lived a good, happy life, all of us kids. First wash machine we ever had, it was one we had to, it was a big old tub and had a little knob on it up there, and we turned it. Somebody had to stand there and turn it like that. But the first washing I ever seen done was on a board. You scrubbed it out over there on the, there's a big rock over there we could set our wash tubs on, and we had to stand there and scrub it. And then put them in a big kettle and boil them. And then take them out and rinse and hang them out. But all that was done over at the spring house, and in that big bottom over there we had a clothesline there. What we didn't use for the fence, you know, we always had a fence for them. Just throw them across the fence so they dried. Is that taking a picture all this time? Terrible.